Okay, everybody, breaking news. Hello, it is now 7:10 p.m. Eastern, and we can report, and it has been verified both with sources inside the U.S. government and externally, there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran brokered by President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump writes on Truth Social, quote, "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their progress final missions. For 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. And upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, and God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world." This is a massive victory, everybody, as people woke up today with a lot of dooming. And I got to say that on this program, we took a lot of incoming when we said, trust President Trump, trust the president, and trust his team and his ability to navigate all of this. And not only today did we get a very fake theatrical response from Iran with 0 American troops killed, none. 0 American troops killed. We are now getting a peace deal in the Middle East. We are getting a settlement in the Middle East, the likes of which we never could have imagined, that will now bring this to closure between Israel and Iran. There is some news circulating online where people say, oh, this is fake, this is not true. Some Iranian official did not confirm this. That is not correct. Iran has confirmed to Reuters the ceasefire is happening. Don't believe the fake news. Quote, Reuters reports that according to a source close to the negotiations, Qatar's prime minister spoke with Tehran by phone and gained Iran's agreement to a U.S. ceasefire proposal. You're seeing Qatar as kind of being a central player in all of this. I believe we have Jack Posobiec here. I want to bring him in. But everyone, I want to just repeat, there's no boots on the ground. There is no endless war. There's no regime change. There is no change in the hearts of minds. There is no consensus changing war. There is no Iraq. There is no Afghanistan. There is no Syria. There is no Libya. Instead, President Trump has charted a third way. No nuclear program, no dead U.S. troops, no regime change, no long, endless war. Jack Posobiec is here. Jack, this is a remarkable victory for President Trump, for our agenda, for the American people. And I just got to say, there's a lot of people that are going to have to do some backpedaling and some apologizing for everything they said about President Trump, everything they said about our movement the last couple of days. Jack Posobiec, your thoughts on this historic ceasefire announcement that President Trump was able to broker?
Well, Charlie, they said it couldn't be done. And just like so many other things, as President Trump has said throughout his career, under budget and ahead of schedule. So this is something where, of course, a peace deal between, or at least a ceasefire, I should say, not a full peace deal, but a ceasefire, hopefully, which leads to a peace deal. And I'm sure there's going to be much more work as we see coming through with Witkoff and President Trump's other ambassadors and envoys into that region as it goes through, that this is what President Trump had been working for all along. We know that there had been recalcitrance. Obviously, there are deep simmering resentments in the region. This has been a fight that's been going on for a long, long time, a lot longer than you and I have been alive, Charlie. But it was only through President Trump that perhaps this daylight was allowed to be brokered through. And that, the biggest losers here are the neocons. The biggest losers
100%.
Are the people who wanted this to get into a protracted war, who wanted this full-on regime change war in Iran. Senator Lindsey Graham was down there in the well of the Senate for all afternoon, and we played this earlier, and he's talking about, we need regime change now, regime change now, regime change now. But look, President Trump has said that he wouldn't be against it, but he's signaled that he's not for a larger war. He drew one circle around the nuclear goals, the nuclear ambitions of Iran. He said no, but he said that's it. And now, boom, has fully come back to the position that he always had, was to say, number one, stop the nukes, and then number two, we want peace. And so this, by the way, Charlie, this opens up doors potentially for an even broader peace agreement down the road. And so politically, I think what a lot of people miss is that President Trump was setting this all up for a larger peace deal, and he had to get the pieces in place at first, and maybe at one time or another, not everyone could see the big picture, but that's what President Trump was always playing from. This is the commander's desired end state, and it's very clear, as we would say in the military, that the commander's desired end state has been achieved.
And by the way, this is very important, that everyone understand that we have a ceasefire framework between Israel and Iran. Now, it's a little more complex than that. It has to play itself out 12 hours to 24 hours. But this is now confirmed by the Emir of Qatar. This is major, everybody. Everyone says, oh, World War III, price of oil is going to $180 a barrel. Understand this. President Donald Trump did two things simultaneously. No nuclear weapons for Iran and no endless wars. Remember, Jack, we talked about that was President Trump's challenge here, was trying to balance those two things together, that we do not want endless war, we don't want regime change, we don't want boots on the ground, we don't want any of the stuff that John Bolton and Lindsey Graham want, but we also don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. How can we balance those two things together? And President Donald Trump, he was able to navigate this with incredible specificity, understanding the lack of appetite, including for himself, to have boots on the ground, while also saying that we are going to remove Iran's nuclear capability. Jack, should Donald Trump be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize? If you care about faith, family, and freedom, listen up. I'm proud to partner with AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. While AARP pushes a woke agenda, AMAC is fighting for Social Security, election integrity, and to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. You can get an AMAC membership for as little as $12 a year, and it includes your spouse. You also get discounts, benefits, and the AMAC magazine packed with conservative insight. Go to amac.us/Kirk and join the movement. That's amac.us/Kirk. Do it today.
Well, Charlie certainly should. I believe the government of Pakistan just a couple of days ago nominated President Trump for it. So for once, I'm able to say that I agree with the Pakistanis, and I think that President Trump certainly should be in the room. Look, there's no president anywhere, certainly not Barack Obama, who got us into deeper and deeper war against this, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, but he got it on day one of his administration, before he'd even done anything, before he had kicked off the regime change war in Libya, before he kicked off the Syrian civil war, which turned into yet another protracted regime change war, where, by the way, Americans died, And Charlie, we haven't seen any Americans killed here whatsoever. Look, they're calling President Trump, and I said this last week, they're going to be saying this, and people came at me, and I said they're going to be calling him, I said this on Human Events Daily, the deal maker in chief. This is the man who wrote the art of the deal. This is the man who put it together, and he's proven to the entire world that he is, in fact, the deal maker in chief.
And by the way, can we just also say that some of the quote unquote trusted voices have gotten this thing so wrong? It turns out, Jack, I mean, we have to take a little bit of a victory lap for this program and for what we've been doing on our podcast, what we've been doing together. Jack, we kind of pitched a little bit of a perfect game here. You know, we said no regime change. We said it was likely that President Trump was going to strike. We even offered some caution introductory elements of this. But President Trump here, he acted with incredible prudence and decisiveness. And now we have not just an end to U.S. involvement in the Middle East. This is an end to the war, a war that people thought was going to be the war to end all wars. Who would have thought 12 days ago, Jack, that Israel preemptively striking Iran would end 12 days later with 0 American troops dead and no nuclear program for Iran? I hope you all understand this is not normal. This usually results in regime change, boots on the grounds, Marines in Tehran, we're mobilizing aircraft carriers. Instead, President Donald Trump brought it right up to the brink, got what we wanted, and was able then to proceed for what was best for America and for Western civilization. Jack Posobiec.
Well, and Charlie, not only that, but you know, I'll give credit where credit's due. Charlie, you were the one who called when Israel's initial attack would take place. You were the one who said, I guess 12 days, we're calling it the 12-day war. I love that branding, by the way. If we're calling it the 12-day war, then Charlie, it was you 12 days ago, several hours, 2 hours, right? I'm remembering now, 2 hours exactly to the moment when you said the strikes would be taking place. Right, so we knew that. We came up live, and people said, "Why are Jack and Charlie live? Why are you guys doing all this?" Because you had the intel, right? So when you're watching the Charlie Kirk Show, when you're watching Real America's Voice, when you're watching Human Events Daily, you're ahead of the mainstream media. And then Steve, even publicly, Steve Bannon, over on War Room on the Saturday morning show, when we're up there, we're saying the party's on tonight. The party's on. It's the only place in the world that you heard any of that. And so for people who are saying, oh, well, these guys, they're this way, they're that way, I said, guys, if you would listen to us and just us for the entire time, and I'm not saying you have to do that, by the way, go listen to anybody. Go listen to anybody you want. I'm not one of those people. But if you did listen to us, we told you what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, and generally, I think for pretty much every major piece of this before it happened, with the exception, and I will say with the exception of this peace deal, this ceasefire deal, because only President Trump could have done it in Trump time.
And by the way, he makes this look so easy. Understand what he just did. Obama was never able to do. Bush was never able to do. No permanent war, no nuclear program. No permanent war, no nuclear program.
Well, and no pallets of cash either. Remember the pallets of cash, Charlie?
No pallets of cash, no sanction relief. Everybody, this is not normal. And for all the people that were doubting President Trump, we never wavered on this program. And I want to even say more importantly, for those of you that never wavered, good on you. For those of you that trusted President Trump, for those of you that knew that President Trump had the wisdom and he had the experience and he had the wherewithal, God bless you, because you understood exactly the high stakes situation here. And remember, we went through the list. When President Trump struck Syria, no endless war. President Trump took out Soleimani, no endless war. President Trump took out ISIS, no endless war. In fact, I could even say this was not even a war. And all these people that were attacking President Trump and so viciously attacking him, you were wrong. Let me say this again. You were wrong. And by the way, you should also just say, I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong in life. But you know what's not okay? And it's not okay to lie to your audience, act as if you had President Trump's back this entire time. And Jack, you remember, you and I were texting yesterday. I want to throw to Andrew. Jack, remember, I was defending President Trump yesterday on X. And people were saying, whoa, it's a little hot there, Charlie. The tide is turning against Trump. And I said, no. Remember that, Jack? You and I were texting. I said, I'm going all in. Yep. We're defending this guy. This guy, and now 24 hours later, the people that were honestly so flimsy against President Trump. I'm getting really fired up here. And Andrew, you could tell. Andrew, you and I were talking about this, that on X and some social channels, people had no trust in President Trump. What else does President Trump have to do to win your trust over? He ended the India-Pakistan war. President Trump has secured the southern border completely. We have inflation going down. We're about to pass the big, beautiful bill. And now President Trump is ending Israel-Iran war while no nuclear weapons. Andrew, I would think at this point, President Trump has overwhelmingly earned your trust. Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, what I think about is just how many people President Trump has made fools of this week and last week. And what was unique about this is we're used to President Trump making fools of the foreign policy establishment or Democrats or the media talking heads. But this was a little bit different because it struck at this online debate about the position of Israel, about foreign interventions. And so it made fools of a new cadre of people. And one of the things that I'm really proud of our show and of Jack's show, War Room certainly, is that there was a lack of panic. And I'll never forget when you went on Jesse Waters on, it looks like June 16th. So about 7 days ago, 1 week to the day. And it looked like there was just this, is he going to strike? What do we do if he strikes? Israel's forcing the hand. What do you do in this impossible situation? And I'll never forget, you looked at the camera, Jesse threw it to you, and you said, you know what you do? You trust Trump. He's earned our trust. And then for the next week, you just saw, I think, a lot of Trump's supporters echoing that sentiment. Trust Trump. What are we going to do? This is why we elected the guy. You need a strong person in this impossible situation.
100%.
And I'll say one more thing, Charlie. I think yesterday, especially on X, there was this argument kind of raging about, you don't blindly trust any politician. I don't care if his name's Trump or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's true. You can always ask questions. You always raise concerns. You always have a robust debate. That's the sign of a healthy movement. But what's not a healthy position when you have a guy that you've been riding with for 10 years now that survived assassination attempts, impeachment attempts, that's done foreign interventions, by the way, with Soleimani and ISIS and the Moab, and he's gone toe-to-toe with Rocket Man in North Korea. I mean, this guy has earned our trust that he is not a regime change president, that he is not a quagmire or nation builder president. And so there was a lot of groundwork that he'd done in the past decade that he deserved our trust. And so for people to so blindly throw that away and act like that he had somehow fundamentally changed, I mean, I get it. We've all got a little PTSD after the last decade. But that was kind of my point. It's one thing to question.
There was no consistency to it. It's just, and no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like the people that were saying that, there was no reason to believe that somehow after Soleimani, after al-Baghdadi, after Syria, after all of those campaign promises, all of a sudden Donald Trump was going to reemerge as John Bolton. Only you and your own delusion would lead you to that. And I was just trying to reconfigure people. I say, who do you think this guy is? He's playing high game brinksmanship. He's saying one thing. He's doing rhetorical dance with another. He's doing rhetorical threats. And by the way, you could actually probably play out. Yeah, and by the way, Jack, you could make an argument. His regime change tweet yesterday was a little bit of a taunt and a threat to Iran to not go after U.S. service members because in the back of their head, they were thinking, oh, my goodness, potentially, Donald Trump is going to execute regime change.
Well, and you never know.
Iran. Please, Jack.
Yeah, you never know also behind the scenes what phone calls he's making, what messages he's making to the Russians, to the Chinese, to Xi Jinping, to Vladimir Putin. We saw that the Iranian foreign minister was in Russia last night. He's talking to the Israelis. So President Trump, and Charlie, you know this as well as anyone, he's working the phones constantly. He's constant communication with everybody, certainly talking to world leaders. So this idea that just because he's sending one message out publicly, that's the only thing he's thinking about is, guys, you're not always seeing the bigger picture. And I'm not making some argument for, 4D warfare or whatever, but you never know who he's talking to specifically in situations like this. And let's not forget for a second here that this was the man who walked into North Korea, who stepped across that line when Barack Obama was terrified of going with the binoculars up there and he's looking the observation post. President Trump's the man who took Kim Jong-un's hand and walked directly into North Korea, crossing that line. And so he was willing to do so in the name of peace and normalizing relations between the world and North Korea. And so we know President Trump's commitment. He's put himself personally in harm's way in the name of peace. And so when you see different things that go out there, I always just say, he's the deal maker in chief. He's always doing art of the deal. You never know what's going on behind the scenes.
And Jack, to your point, I think part of the Trump doctrine, the MAGA doctrine, is the unpredictability of it all. And this is what you saw at play with the base. The base had sort of, especially online on places like X, had created a myth of dovishness for President Trump that I don't think he's ever actually sort of put out there. He's like, yeah, listen, what I do works. I don't start new wars. I finish old ones. I finish dumb wars. But like what you were seeing is that the base was like, well, we want peace. We don't want deployment of troops. And what the whole point of Trump's brinksmanship is that he's able to defy norms. You have to give him latitude, a very wide latitude and wide leash to even defy sort of the things that he's, sort of promised or said. I know that may sound counterintuitive, but if you were to bring him back, if you were to sort of demand that he couldn't make those points, then you would take away his leverage. You would take away his brinksmanship and the thing that makes Trump Trump. And this is exactly, Charlie, I want to give you some credit here. This is cut 377. Please get it ready. And this was, again, on June 16th, in the middle of all of this fog, as the base, you could feel the base getting very unsettled. And you went on Fox, which, if we're just being honest, there's a lot of people on Fox that are a lot more hawkish about war. And Jesse asked you, well, hey, what about the base that sounds like they don't want this? And you threaded the needle brilliantly. You had Trump's back. You gave him latitude to act. And it was a brilliant moment. I'm never personally going to forget this moment because the stakes were so high that night, Charlie. 377.
President Trump understands his base extraordinarily well. He knows that his base does not want another Iraq. He does not want Libya, does not want a civil war or bedlam where the United States is left carrying the bag. But also President Trump has been morally clear for a decade. Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. And President Trump has the talent, the expertise to be able to thread that needle. The generation that I represent, Jesse, the under 30 crowd, they absolutely are very war weary. Many of them voted for President Trump on college campuses because they did not want to see a Joe Biden or George Bush philosophy where we get into this endless conflict where we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars. I think President Trump will be able to balance those two things while defending our allies, saying that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon without having to deploy a single American troop or even having America involved from the sky, President Trump can get that deal done while fulfilling the mandate that the voters gave him.
Called the shot, Charlie. Your reaction to yourself, Charlie.
No, the only thing I put a caveat without maybe America not getting involved from the sky. Turns out President Trump authorized that. Besides that, I think we called the shot pretty clearly, right? And so, I just want to repeat this, everybody. You are living through history. You understand how unlikely this? If Joe Biden was president, we would be authorizing $50 billion in aid to the Persian rebels. If Joe Biden was president, we'd be calling for regime change, and they would have another endless war on our hands. Understand, President Donald Trump is like, whoa, I'm not going to go down this sink with saying end this thing. And by the way, for all of the people that are, anti-Qatar, and I get it, there's money flowing from Qatar all over the places and not some good place. And yes, they're warmer with the Iranians than they should be. If it wasn't for Qatar and our relationship with Qatar, we might not been able to end this thing right now. Qatar played a central role in us being able to end this war.
Well, and this, think about this. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, no, please.
I'm thinking about, there's been so much criticism, and Jack, you could probably weigh in on this even more, but of President Trump seemingly cozying up to Qatar. Also, but think about the olive branch, Charlie, that he offered to Syria. So, so Trump is playing this whole thing differently and counterintuitively, and those friendships and those olive branches are giving him extraordinary leverage in this region to pressure the Saudis, the Qataris, Bahrainis, all of them to get on board with this peace plan.
And we just have to repeat this. And Jack, I want to throw it to you. This is not normal. What President Trump has been able to execute is in no way normal whatsoever. This is being able to bring different components together when we have Iran, we have Israel. We woke up this morning wondering, what is Iran's response going to be? We are now ending the day with a drafted ceasefire. Again, there's still some components there, 12-hour, 24 hours. Kind of confusing with all that. You got to finish your operations, kind of get it out of their system. So, Jack, but understand this. Were there not people this afternoon, Jack, that were pushing for the regime change upsell? And if so, who?
Well, there were, and I'm looking at some of the data. So it's been 90 minutes at this point. I want to be clear. It's been 90 minutes just for a check-in for everybody. 90 minutes since President Trump has announced this. So the complete and total ceasefire, so 6 hours after his tweet, which is at 6 p.m. Eastern time, would be midnight on the Eastern Seaboard here. So midnight at the Eastern Seaboard. As we know, by the way, President Trump scheduled to attend the NATO conference in The Hague tomorrow. And so this obviously will be a huge part of those discussions, but we're going to be really, potentially up till midnight to see what's going on. Operations continuing between Iran and Israel, also getting some reports of explosions in Baghdad right now. So in Iraq, a lot of questions as to actually how this goes. But, I think the next 12 to 24 hours are going to be absolutely critical. But Charlie, to your point, this is something, and the Washington Post actually quoted me on this, this phrase, the regime change upsell. And here's what I said. I said, look, President Trump has always been clear that he wants the denuclearization of Iran, and that this operation was solely focused on the denuclearization of Iran. It's something that he said even when he came down the golden escalator 10 plus years ago now. However, there were those out there trying to upsell him on it. Lindsey Graham, Mark Levin. You just saw this cavalcade of people saying, well, you can't let the regime stay in power, Mr. President. You've got to take them out because that's the way to do this. That's what, and Netanyahu himself said this as well. So there was this regime change, this idea of upselling, like when I compared it to when you go to the dentist for, a cleaning, and then they start trying to upsell you on pulling your wisdom teeth and all this other work, or when your car's needs some new tires, and then suddenly they want to put brakes and rotors and all this other work being done. And Shane Gillis actually has a whole new sitcom all about working in an auto shop, right? He's a mechanic. It's really funny, by the way. And so this idea of the regime change upsell, they use the foot in the door strategy. So they get their foot in the door on the denuclearization, and then they try to upsell. They say, well, you're here anyway. You might as well take them out. You might as well get the rest of it. Lindsey Graham gives this massive speech, right? So Lindsey Graham gives a massive speech in the well of the Senate today saying, we need to do this, we need to do that. We have to take them out. It compares it to World War II, compares it to Hitler. And within minutes after Lindsey Graham's speech, and within minutes after 3 hours, almost exactly. So within 3 hours of Mark Levin going up and almost directly attacking President Trump for calling for peace, boom, President Trump has announced a peace deal in terms of this ceasefire. So for those guys who are pushing
Huge.
the regime change upsell, really does not look good on you. Really does not.
So we have Blake here as well. I'm going to throw to Blake in a second here. But Andrew, I want to kind of get back to you here. The online chatter and the online vibe here. I mean, this is a major victory, right? This is as big as it and good as it gets. What does this mean politically, Andrew? Because what I'm reading online, a lot of people are starting the big backpedal. A lot of people that were attacking President Trump and doubting President Trump, they're scrubbing tweets. They're deleting tweets, actually. They're reconfiguring. They're trying to manipulate audiences. Andrew, what does this mean politically? And also talk our audience through some of the incoming that we received for trying to tell people to remain calm and steady throughout these last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with that last question first. I mean, Charlie, you've personally been called a warmonger and you've been called an isolationist, both used as pejoratives. So if you dared defend the president and getting behind him, and Charlie, I hope I'm not sharing some stuff out of school here, but, you know, you were very clear. You were going to support the president's decision if he chose to move. I don't know that
100%.
you were not enthusiastic about any American involvement.
I was very cautious. I was very cautious.
Yeah.
Very cautious.
You were very cautious, but you said, I think both publicly and privately, I will defend you if you move, right? And I trust 100%. You. I mean, that's essentially what it was. You've earned my trust. You've had my back. I'm going to have yours. I hope this all ends well, right? And so, you know, I don't think of that as being a warmonger or as a dove, an isolationist. And essentially, there are shades of gray. There's nuance here. Obviously, everybody in this show, Jack, I know you got something breaking here, but everybody in the show wants to avoid quagmires, and we want to focus on mass deportations. Like, that's everybody on this show. That's what we want. But sometimes life comes at you quick, and you got to be ready to deal with it. Jack, what's up?
Well, so I do have this, and this is out of my former colleague Trey Yingst, and he's just got it right here. President Trump spoke with Qatar's emir, informed him that the U.S. got Israel to agree to a ceasefire. The president asked Qatar to help persuade Iran, following that the Vice President Vance coordinated directly with Qatar's prime minister on the details. This effort proved successful, and following discussion with the Qatari PM, the Iranians agreed. So it was Israel first, then it was between, so the President Trump asked Qatar, then Vance and Qatar's prime minister worked directly on the details. So again, to Charlie's point about this is why we have the open door there with the Qataris. The deal was then coordinated at the highest level with the president and the vice president, the Qatari emir and the prime minister. Here's the quote. Despite having been this is the Qataris quote, right? Despite having been just attacked a few hours earlier, the Qataris have set aside their grievances and prioritized regional security to get the deal done. And as we've all said a number of times this week, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers.
Amen. Hey, I've been saying that all week, and President Trump is blessed for trying to get to a place of reconciliation and for peace. There's a lot more, boy. If you wanted ratings, I could tell you a lot more of the backstory that happened this last week, but I don't share or leak stuff. That's not what I do. But I will say this, and Andrew, to your point, I told the president and his team, if you guys do this, we will have your back because I trust your judgment. And I said that both publicly and privately because that's what you get out of here on this program. What I say publicly, I also say privately and vice versa. This is a nice tee up here, 379. This is the left-wing spin. The left-wing spin is now all of a sudden they want to impeach Donald Trump for bombing Iran. Now, how are they going to possibly do this? He is brokering peace in the Middle East in a way we've never seen before. Play cut 379.
I have worked in an administration that has had to communicate. I was in the Biden administration in the first year when the president made the decision to pull out of Afghanistan. And I think you can tell a lot about the administration's actions from how they are communicating outwardly about it. What do these comments today and also yet this weekend from the Vice President, Secretary of State, right, Secretary of Defense, what do these comments tell you about the strategy that the administration is employing here, or is there one at all?
No, they're making it up, Simone, as they go along.
Well, okay, so Jack, what do they mean they're making it up? First of all, we have a peace deal. I'm going to go through the no's, okay? No more war. No boots on the ground. No regime change. No endless war. No aid to the Persian rebels. And no nuclear weapons for Iran. Jack, those 6 big no's I just said is a dream. Please respond to MSNBC here.
Well, I mean, they're sitting up there, and if I miss my guess, they're trying to compare this to like what Biden was doing in Afghanistan and the pullout and all the rest of it. And it's ridiculous what they're doing here. And it's gross. It's just absolutely gross. And so what we're talking about is a president who's putting American lives first. That's absolutely correct. American treasure first. I don't see any pallets of cash being sent over to Tehran. I didn't see any any of this capitulation and the JICPOA and all these different things. By the way, this opens the door, right? Because Iran has now shown rationality. So this is clear, by the way. So Iran has shown rationality, and that opens the door. So if we're talking about the foot in the door tactic now, the upsell here is a broader nuclear deal for Iran to perhaps keep this off the shelf completely, a broader peace deal, perhaps normalization, at least stabilization within the region. This opens the door for so many things that none of these talking heads saw going on. And by the way, it's not the Taliban being given $9 billion of American equipment the same way that Joe Biden left them. And by the way, General Milley left them. I was there. Actually, Charlie, it was at I believe it was a Turning Point Action reception where President Trump talked about that. And he had some choice words for General Milley that have gone quite viral since that day down there at Mar-a-Lago talking about this, because this shows the difference between a president who's an idiot and a president who knows how to achieve the commander's desired end state.
So now I want to throw it to Blake here. Blake, you're kind of our historical mastermind here. Blake, can you summarize the roller coaster in the context of 5 years of Iran and Trump, from the drone to Soleimani to the Iranian nuclear deal to assassination threats to bombing nuclear sites to now a peace deal? Blake, this is a roller coaster likes of which we've never seen between Persia and the United States.
It really is, Charlie. It's I think hopefully when all is said and done, we'll look back on this as the Trump experience, the Trump tactics, the Trump strategy at its best, at its most successful. And I think we can all freely admit it can be pretty stressful to go through, the same way riding a roller coaster can be stressful. As you say everything very publicly what you're going to do. President Trump is a little different. President Trump, he is a businessman who's used to negotiation, who's used to having, a public face as well as private intentions. So President Trump is the kind of guy who can do things like say, I'm giving you 2 weeks, but actually I've already decided to hit you tomorrow. He can say, I'm willing to go as much as it takes, willing to do anything. I'm willing to overthrow your government because actually I want you to just come to the table so we can get this done. And we've seen this now over nearly a decade. President Trump said on his first day running for office that he hated the Iraq war and he didn't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And I think that is where he was at his most clear-cut, his most honest, his most, it was the best guide to everything that's happened since. And since then, it's been the ride. So we had Iran shot down one of our drones, and there were people who wanted major strikes on Iran over this. And Trump seemed like he might be open to this, and then he dialed it back, and he said, we don't need to do this. Then we had Soleimani. They were getting overly aggressive in, the whole Syria, Lebanon area. He said, you know what? We can show them we mean business. Blow up their guy. Boom. Blows them up. I believe he was in Iraq when it happened. And then he took the rocket volley in response to that. And there was a lot of pressure. Got to escalate further. And he said, nope, we don't need to do that. They shot their shot. Wasn't a big deal. We can move on. And this is the highest stakes version of that. He said, Iran, you have 2 months to make a deal with us, and if not, something bad will happen. Those 2 months passed, and they called President Trump's bluff, so he allowed Israel to start a war, and then he followed up himself with strikes, and he even signaled, oh, maybe it's time for us to do regime change in Iran. But now we're seeing the other end of it. He's actually still exactly where he was in 2015. I am ready to make a deal. My main priority is don't let you get a nuclear bomb. And other than that, I don't want an Iraq war. I am perfectly fine stepping away. It's been stressful. We've always wondered where he's going, one direction or the other. But in the end, we've gotten to a place that seems very good for America.
Amen. Blake, that was well said. I want to throw to Senator Mullin from Oklahoma. First of all, Senator Mullin, congratulations on the Thunder winning the NBA Finals. We're not here to talk about that, but I'm sure your family's happy about it. So now you get to celebrate an NBA Finals victory, most importantly, peace in the Middle East. Senator Mullin, we've been saying trust President Trump this whole time. This is historic. No troops on the ground, no regime change, no U.S. force having to go into some permanent quagmire, and no nukes for Iran. Senator Mullin, your reaction?
Yeah, this is, as the president's saying, this is a 12-day war. This is exactly what peace through strength looks like. When you're able to use strength in a decisive way, you're able to declare what victory looks like before you even use strength. You're able to also declare the terms of, I wouldn't say surrender, but the terms of de-escalation. And that's exactly what took place here. The president positioned himself through deterrence. He had the assets in the area to be able to deliver on what needed to be done. He delivered on those assets precisely. And then he had enough restraint, even when the Ayatollah, which we knew they had to say something, shot back at us. They had enough fear of President Trump and his leadership that they actually gave us a heads up that, hey, this is what we're going to do. Just understand it's coming, and then we're probably in a good spot. And the president immediately responded by saying, appreciate the heads up, appreciate the war is over, and we look forward to hopefully having good relationships with you moving forward. And leave it up to the Iranian people if they want regime change. That's what leadership looks like.
Totally.
What President Trump just pulled off.
Amen. I know your time is limited here, Senator Mullin, but just final question here. How does this, if at all, impact the big, beautiful bill? We need unity from the Republican Party. We need no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. We need Trump tax cuts, border security, Golden Dome. How does this impact the big, beautiful bill, if at all? Narrative reset. We should see unity in the Republican Party. Please, Senator Mullin.
It doesn't affect us at all. We are moving forward. In fact, I just stepped out of a hour and a half long conference with the Republican senators. Before that, I was in a meeting with leadership for an hour discussing a path forward. I think we're in a very good spot. Hopefully, we could possibly see text and culture on this by Wednesday, Thursday, and could even possibly start voting to vote Obama as early as Friday. So we're on track to move forward. There's a lot of people in the room, Charlie, that's got a lot of ideas still. We respect those ideas. They want to make the bill better, and we all do, but we can't allow perfection to get in the way of good, because the fact is, when this bill comes to the floor, you're going to have two options. A, vote to move forward with the Trump-era policies, or B, you vote no and say, hey, I prefer to stay with Biden policies. That's not a good place for any Republican to be.
Senator, you're doing a great job. You are the Senate-House liaison, so when you speak about this, it really matters. Senator, come back when you have more time. Thank you so much, and congratulations to the world and to the people of Oklahoma. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I want to throw back here. I want to hear from you, freedom@charliekirk.com, but I think this is an important theme, everybody, because this will not be the last trial. I've been through this for 10 years. Andrew, how many times did I tell you? I was like, guys, I've been through this for 10 years. I've seen this cycle play out, and it always ends up okay. And it goes up and it goes down, and it's just kind of like, okay, what's going on here? We're going right to the brink. I don't know if we still have Andrew, because we had Senator Mullin. We might throw him back here, but we do.
I'm here.
But what are the lessons here for everybody that doubted President Trump, for everyone that didn't trust President Trump? What are the lessons here that people need to derive, which is that maybe when you read Truth Socials, there might be something else going on? And has this man not earned your trust yet, Andrew?
Yeah, I think about two things: tariffs and the Iran strikes. Those are really the two moments where this trust in the president has been stressed. Where even some of the base, even some of his supporters start, screaming. The panicins, if you will. Jack is the king of the panikin shutdown. So I won't steal your panikin thunder here, Jack. But those are the two moments of this Trump 2.0 where I'm like, listen, it's worked
panicins.
out. It's worked out both times. And we pray this holds. I mean, there's still a part of me in the back of my mind that's kind of waiting for the next, the 6-hour mark, the 12-hour mark. But yeah, I mean, Trump, once again, I go back to this idea that you have to let Trump sort of defy your expectations to get to the point that we want to get to. He has to sometimes stretch the limits of what everybody's comfortable with. And, everybody thinks they've got Trump figured out. They go, this is how Trump does it. He does this, and then he does it. And then as soon as you think you've got the formula figured out, he scrambles the formula again, and everybody freaks out again, like we've never done this. And then at the end of the day, we wrap up exactly where we all hoped we would.
And,
I just want to know.
So, Blake, I think this is all, Jack, let's go to Jack. Jack, go ahead. And then we'll go to Blake.
I was going to say, I just want to know,
Jack first.
and for the Human Events Daily audience out there, has anyone done a wellness check on Lindsey Graham? Has anyone? I think he's in D.C. He might be down in South Carolina. I just want to make sure, is Lindsey Graham going to be all right? I'm concerned about him as an elected official of our nation. I want to make sure that the people of South Carolina are well represented. Does anyone want to do a wellness check on him or the other neocon warmongers out there who were foaming at the mouth? There were people out there who were calling, go all the way, Mr. President, go all the way to Tehran, take them all out, wipe this out, with no plan whatsoever. They don't even know the ethnic makeup of the country. They don't even know the size of the country, the population. They had no plan whatsoever for what would come next. And they just kept demanding more and more and more. And President Trump has very smartly shut them all down.
Shut them down decisively and quickly. By the way, we're on Real America's Voice. Hello to Real America's Voice. To everybody watching our 100,000 concurrents and on Real America's Voice, I encourage you guys to download the Real America's Voice app where you are able to see us live every day, Jack and myself, for a 3-hour block. If you incorporate Steve Bannon, it's nearly a 5-hour block. Blake, I want to ask you here, I'm trying to remember my question. It was a really good question, too. But Blake, we kind of go through that saga. How would you historically categorize President Trump's foreign policy? And can we now just kind of shed ourselves of the isolationist, interventionist binary? Love him or hate him, but President Trump has definitely created a third way. He has created a new path where he is not a dove, but he's willing to use short, violent force. And then a more provocative question for you, Blake. Blake, are we entering an age of the end of long wars? You might say, no, Charlie, look at Israel and Gaza, that's long, or Russia, Ukraine. But as long from an American standpoint, will America fight another long war under President Trump? I'm just asking, I'm thinking out loud here because it seems like the appetite for long wars is not strong here in the United States. Your thoughts, Blake?
Well, I don't want us to jump to too many conclusions on it. First of all, President Trump's term is not over. You never want to just declare anything official or done or complete as long as, there's still history yet to be written. And there still is history yet to be written for the Trump presidency. But I do think we can say that what Trump has been doing is a huge historical break from especially the norm that has existed in the post-Cold War era. That's kind of when you can say the modern phase of American history began. The Cold War ended, and we had Clinton, Bush, Obama, and then also sort of Biden in between the two Trump terms. And what that era was defined by was a few things. It was defined by, as you said, long wars, because America would get committed to. It was like America was trying to be the global police. It was operating on the assumption that the end of history had arrived, and therefore it could bend. Like everywhere in the world was progressing towards this end state, and we could drag them to it. It was America as a quasi-globalist entity because we sort of equated globalist values with American values. And so that's what you got. You got American troops going on these long humanitarian interventions with no end mission, with no real military objective. We got open-ended forever wars in the Middle East. We got this assumption of unlimited American power that caused us to recklessly race into things. And so that's how we got Afghanistan and trillions of dollars spent, thousands dead, no good result. Iraq, trillions spent, thousands dead, a mediocre at best result. We got interventions in Libya where the idea was we have good intentions and that can make up for having no serious plan, no easy way to make this a good outcome, and we can ignore all of the bad outcomes that happen instead. President Trump has thrown out all the assumptions that drove that, and instead, what we've gotten is a return to a more old-fashioned way of doing things for America, which is when you do a military intervention, there should be a goal in mind. If it's going badly, back away quickly, but ideally you're just not going to let it go badly. And that is a way America used to do things. Even relative idealists like Woodrow Wilson, who's overall a pretty globalist guy, he would do things like, oh, there's stuff going on in Mexico, send troops to Mexico. And then, oh, it gets bad, get out. We don't need to stick around forever. It's a willingness to behave. It's an underrated way to behave like a businessman, because businessmen do not commit indefinitely to something that is going to lose them money. They want to get value for what they do.
Blake, exactly right. And this is the MAGA doctrine on full display. By the way, on Real America's Voice, they're going to be going live from Studio 6B for continued coverage. That's going to be happening soon. Also, just as a fun personal note, right now we are the third largest podcast on all podcasts on Apple News. We just got above, we just surpassed Call Her Daddy. Do people really watch that? Call Her Daddy. We are behind Devil in the Desert, whatever that is, and the New York Times Daily. So if you guys subscribe to our podcast, all of us together subscribe to the podcast. We're doing a bunch of giveaways, by the way. We've given out a bunch of hats and a bunch of books. You still might be able to win a hat if you email it to us, but most importantly, we could beat the New York Times together, which would be just an amazing signal. So we might lose Real America's Voice at any second. We'll see you guys tomorrow on Real America's Voice. We're going to continue streaming on all of our platforms. Okay, Real America's Voice will stay with us until, got it. So we're going to probably go just a little bit while longer as we analyze this. Jack, I want you to plug all of your stuff, but Jack, can you also remind the audience, they might see some reports that there are ongoing airstrikes. However, that's within the 12-hour time frame. This is a little confusing for people.
Right. And
so can you do that and also plug your stuff, Jack? Just kind of explain that,
Human
please.
Events Daily. Follow that everywhere. Our email, send us your questions, send us your comments, send us your theories on what's going on. 1776 at humanevents.com. 1776 at humanevents.com. Go and follow Human Events Daily, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. By the way, Charlie, of those other podcasts, New York Times Daily and Call Her Daddy, I've been on one of them, but not the other. But I'm going to leave it to the audience to guess which it was. As far as the dates,
which one was it?
No, not saying. It was one of them. Multiple times, by the way. The strikes that we're seeing, so we're seeing some stuff now. Strikes are hitting in Iran, in Tehran. We also saw, I mentioned earlier, there were some strikes on Baghdad. It looks like those were on Iranian proxies, so I would guess that would be Israel. Their drones, we're told, are hitting Iranian proxies right now. Look, this is the reason that President Trump put out, and we walked you through this time frame of the ceasefire, that it's going to be a phased ceasefire, because look, when you're running military operations like this, communications are what they
ceasefire.
are.
I love that. Keep going. It's great.
The information, and there's even stories about one of the biggest Revolutionary War battles that were fought even after Yorktown took place. So communications do break down after war, in wartime. And look, if you got fighters up, if you got assets out in the ground, some of these operate without communication, so of course the enemy can't track them, but then that also means you don't get the ability to run down to them and say, hey guys, by the way, call it off. And so I would expect to see more strikes from potentially both sides. Now, interestingly enough, the Iranians would have an easier way of stopping their strikes, because their strikes are predominantly missile-based, and so presumably the commanders are in direct communication with Tehran, whereas with Israel, you've got fighters, you've got Mossad, you've got drones, you've got all sorts of other stuff going on, so it might be harder for them to be able to call it off. That may be the reason that we saw the phase in the ceasefire for President Trump's tweet. But either way, expect a few more attacks like this tonight, and then really tomorrow is what we're looking for to see if the ceasefire holds.
And so a phased ceasefire is a smart and understandable way to put that. I want to just spend a couple more minutes here before we conclude, and I want to hear your thoughts, freedom@charliekirk.com. I want to just play the amazing messaging of J.D. Vance, but let's contrast this. First, this is Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor calling for regime change. President Donald Trump rejected the neocon, interventionist nation builder. No nation building, no troops on the ground, no U.S. troops killed, and no nukes for Iran. It's an amazing masterclass that he's put on. Let's play cut 382.
It's about a religious agenda. Why do they do what they do? Religious, fanatical beliefs, a master religion for the world. And if you don't believe that, you have missed a lot. That's what they want. And the only way they're not going to get there is for somebody to stop them. What did Hitler want? To take over the entire world and create a master race. Anybody that didn't fit his definition of the right kind of person was imprisoned or killed. The Ayatollah and his henchmen have that same view, but it's religiously driven.
Not everything is comparable to Hitler, but yes, the Iranian regime is very bad. Here is J.D. Vance. Look at the contrast between him and J.D. Vance. Just night and day. J.D.'s just extraordinary right now. Play cut 375.
Iranians, I think this is a new opportunity to actually pursue the path of peace. As I said yesterday, what the Iranians have showed through their support of terror networks, through their now failed effort to build a nuclear weapon, is that they're just not very good at war. And I think the president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region. That's always been his goal. I actually think when we look back, we will say the 12-day war was an important reset moment for the entire region.
A reset for the entire region. We're going to see what everybody wants in this situation. And I think that peace is going to prevail only through American strength. Do we have another J.D. Vance clip? I think we do. I think we have another J.D. Vance one that we can play here, if I'm not mistaken.
374, I think.
Let's play 374, please.
He talked about the next 6 hours, finalizing the attacks. I mean, I think what he's talking about is right now, for the American people watching, it's dark over there. That's typically when the Israelis and the Iranians have been shooting at each other. I think there's some recognition that that might continue for another few hours. And tomorrow really is a new day. The end of the 12-day war, the end of the Iranian nuclear program. And I really do believe the beginning of something very big for peace in the Middle East.
I mean, J.D. Vance is looking more and more like someone who's going to be a phenomenal president sometime in his future. One more excellent one. Let's play cut 376.
The president is saying very clearly, Brett, is if the Iranian people want to do something about their own leadership, that's up to the Iranian people. What the American national security interest here is very simple. It's to destroy the nuclear program. That's what we've done. And now that the 12-day war appears to be effectively over, we have an opportunity, I think, to restart a real peace process. And
to restart a real peace process. And so let me ask Andrew here. Andrew, what is the way that we now keep the coalition together? Andrew, you have some great insight here. People have gotten very heated. I think we should also, A, keep expectations in check that Iran has been very bad actor, but this is a win. Let's make no mistake. This is a win, everybody. No U.S. troops dead, nuclear program severely diminished and damaged. Also, it's no boots on the ground, no regime change, no nation building. But Andrew, what do we have to do to keep the coalition together, to keep what we have built? Young people, muscular class, moms, parents, first-time voters, traditional conservatives, more hawks. What now that we have a ceasefire, how do we get a MAGA movement ceasefire?
Yeah, I think a couple lessons learned, Charlie, over the years is, first of all, we have to avoid putting purity tests on people that should be our friends that maybe stepped a little out of line in the last week. We need to be, to a certain extent, we need to welcome those people back. If it was just, those are passionate moments, we get it. But once again, Trump is going to push you. He's going to stretch you. He's going to put you in uncomfortable positions. This is not a straight line between here and there and where we want to go. So just remember that. Next time this happens, maybe don't press the panic button so soon, first of all. But be gracious. Let's bring the coalition back together. And I think Cernovich had a great point this morning on the Charlie Kirk show, and that was that we also have this Maha coalition. I know, assuming this peace deal holds, we're going to be putting a lot of focus and attention on mass deportations, the big, beautiful bill to get the resources for those mass deportations, but also Maha, all the attention that this group deserves, the Maha moms. That's a really big part of our coalition. I was talking with Rich Barris this morning. He's going to be coming out with a poll. It might be dated now, given that this peace deal has come up, but he's seen some drop off on younger voters that are disappointed in the fact that President Trump struck Iran. Hopefully, we're going to be able to bring them back. We've got some great talking points, Charlie, that it was some of these things that probably resulted in peace. You didn't like it in the moment, but now, in retrospect, you see the wisdom of some of the actions President Trump was taking. So let's just hope that these memories can be shortened, that people's nerves that were frayed, everybody calms down. Charlie, I can't wait for your fall campus tour. If anybody dares challenge you on this, you're going to be able to say, hey, look, you maybe didn't like that tweet about regime change, but maybe that was the tweet that actually forced them to accept the peace deal from Qatar, So there is plenty of meat on this bone
100%.
to go to our base.
By the way, can we just repeat that? President Trump tweeting about regime change the day before got some people fired up, understandably, but maybe that is all of a sudden what got Iran a little bit worried that, hey, this guy's going to go for the head of the snake. Maybe we just do a little bit of theatrics. Can you build that out a little bit more, Andrew?
No, remember, Charlie, he said in that one truth, he said, I know exactly where the supreme leader is. He's in hiding, but it's not, he's not hidden from us. We know exactly where he is. We're not going to he's safe for now. And then he strikes, hits the 3 nuclear sites. And listen, there might be open questions about how degraded their nuclear capacity is. I share that skepticism. I tend to believe that there is still some capacity there in Iran. But hopefully this is a turning of the page. The confrontation, the coming to the head has happened. And the supreme leader understands he's against the ropes. Remember, there is wargaming going on, the likes of which we're not aware of, right? They probably have an exact count or a precise count of how many short-range, mid-range, and long-range ballistic missiles Iran had left. Israel probably is doing the same calculations with the Iron Dome. These are two fighters that we don't know what round of the fight that they both thought they were in. Were they in the third round or were they in the 12th round, and both of them were ready to cry uncle? President Trump probably had a lot of that information and knew that he could get both parties to the table. He played it the way he played it. It turns out he played it right. And so, I think that there is a real chance, and we should all pray for that we could see a turning of the page, an end of one chapter, the beginning of a better chapter with our relations with Iran. I think that's completely on the table at this point.
Yeah, and also, Andrew, if the people of Persia decide to organically rise up, then that's something that we'll cheer for. That's something that we're going to cheer on, right?
That's a great point. And to the people that say there's been moving of the goalposts, this is what I want to say. We have always been against regime change, top-down regime change. We have always been pro if the Iranian people want to do it from the bottom up. But what we did not want, and I think, Jack, you and I talked about this, we did not want, a 2014, Maidan coup repeat where the CIA was embedded and sowing discord. We did not want a repeat of Libya. We did not want a repeat of Iraq.
Or, by the way, a repeat of the last time the United States pushed for regime change in Iran back in the 1950s when we overthrew the democratic republic that Iran had been working towards, and Mossadegh, because he was nationalizing British Petroleum and nationalizing the oil fields there, when the United States of America overthrew the last democratic. I know, because I noticed that Lindsey Graham didn't seem to put that in his little speech there, because he said, "Oh, Iran could be a democracy." I said, "Who overthrew the democracy in Iran, Lindsey? You seem to be loosening up that part." And in fact, the CIA has even publicly acknowledged this, that it was us who overthrew the Prime Minister Mossadegh in the 1950s. We installed the Shah. Then this is, and by the way, I'm not justifying anything that the Iranian regime has done. I'm just telling the truth, okay? Telling the truth that it was because of that the Iranian people said, we're sick of this crap, and then they turned to the nut jobs that eventually formed the Islamic Republic and led to the revolt in 1979. So just tell the truth, Lindsey. Just be honest, but you can't. You just can't.
And we have a little bit more time, and then we have to dash. And I want to have you guys email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. The politics of this, guys, is either people didn't trust President Trump, they didn't trust their own instincts, and President Donald Trump has now just said, quote, "This is the end of the war. It is great and a wonderful thing for Israel and for the world." So there you have it, guys. President Donald Trump is saying it is the end of the war. This is the stuff that Nobel Prizes are made of. I know, Blake, you might cringe. Blake is a little contrarian. I like it. But Blake, if they gave a Nobel Prize to Obama, would this not merit? I mean, I'm just saying. A lot of people are saying it, Blake. A lot of people are saying
if
that.
we get a real peace deal out of it, like long term, I'd say go for it. Yeah, why not?
There you go.
They'll
We got
move heaven
Blake,
and earth to
everybody.
not let
We'll
it
take
happen,
it.
though. They'd give it to Rubio or something like that. But he would certainly deserve it more than, man. There have been so many bad Nobel Peace Prizes. They gave one to Obama. They gave one to Al Gore. Like, I think we've all memory hold that one because Obama's
gosh,
was
is
even
that
dumber.
true?
But they gave it to Al Gore for global
forgot
warming
that.
stuff. There have been some dumb ones. And remember,
The amount that we've been lied to over the years is truly shocking. That that somehow we lifted up Al Gore as a beacon of truth and progress. It's shocking. Go ahead, Blake. I'm sorry. You've just blown my mind.
It's just there's so much it's very funny we still give the Nobel Peace Prize so much weight because there have been a lot of very dumb Nobel Peace Prizes out there. But they don't give it enough for just very straightforward what's the goal in Alfred Nobel's will, and it was to improve harmony among nations and lead to reducing the size of standing armies, I think was the exact line. And if we can achieve that out of this, if we can actually bring this 45-year conflict towards some sort of permanent resolution, that would be a huge win for hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. And if we're able to achieve that before this administration is done, he absolutely should get a Nobel Peace Prize.
There it is. I'll take it, Blake. That was a resounding endorsement from Blake. I mean, it's like you at a 4 or 5. I mean, that's like an average man's 10 right there. I'm going to take it.
Andrew, do you have a form you want to walk people through?
Oh, yes.
By the way.
Yeah, this is going around. Okay, I just want to preface this by saying it's one thing to question. Charlie, I think it's fair to say you, me, Jack, and Blake are on many chats where we question a lot. Questioning is healthy. It can be good. Helps you think through the problems, the pitfalls, all those things. It's a whole nother thing to doomer on a guy that's been riding with you for 10 years and you've gone up and down 1,000 roller coasters and just, because Israel is a part of the equation, you just completely go into brain rot mode. So you can question, just don't go doomer mode. That's the point. So this form is going around on the internet right now, and it's called a Donald Trump apology form. And it says, to Donald Trump from, fill in your name, date it, probably today, reason for behavior.
We all know people that should be filling that out.
Yeah, right. The media tricked me into believing their lies. I was jealous of Trump's aura. My simping for a boy-girl Trump hater convinced me. I didn't listen to his actual speeches. I don't know how politics work. Trump said something mean and hurt my feelings. And then there's a checkbox that says, I will hereby trust the plan, stand with Donald J. Trump, and will not doubt the 45th and 47th president of the United States. Pretty funny. So that's the meme. That's the meme. Again, you can question. It's okay to question. Nobody's asking. This is what pisses me off. Sorry. This is what frustrates me. Apologies to our TV audience. I can't stand it when people say, that you're following some cult. That's not what this is. It's about understanding that we have a coalition and that we don't want to rip apart a winning coalition that delivered a popular vote victory and an electoral landslide. And the popular vote we hadn't won since 2004 with George W. Bush in the middle of a war that he started dumbly. So the point is, this is a really precious thing that we have, and we respect how important and special it is, how historic it is, and we don't want to rip it apart because people press the panic button.
We only have a couple minutes left. Jack, make sure you replug your stuff here for the audience. And Jack, how do we now make sure we bring the MAGA coalition to strength together? What are 5 or 6 or whatever domestic wins that we need? Is it deportations? Is it Epstein files? What do we need right now to focus on domestically? Jack Posobiec.
Well, Charlie, I think that's right. And of course, folks can follow me, Human Events Daily, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts up, 1776 at humanevents.com, 1776 at humanevents.com. Do you think that Trump had this all planned out all along? Do you think this was in response to a secret deal that was made? We want to get into all of it, and we want to hear from you at 1776 at humanevents.com. Charlie, when you talk about domestic agenda, that's exactly right. Look, you mentioned deportations. Absolutely. Epstein files. Absolutely. By the way, how about perp walking some of the people that were working to overthrow our actual duly elected president back in 2016, 2017, the first term, going after that corruption, going after the election integrity issues, one of the things that I think a lot of people have wanted to address for a long, long time and just hasn't been able to get done. Tim Dillon had a great segment on his show earlier this week that I caught where he was saying, look, guys, we didn't put people in office to just write novels. We put people in office to get things done. And that guy, he wasn't like some Trump endorser, but he pointed out, he said, you can't just be up there talking about stuff. You have to actually do things. We're talking about various people that have come into power now. And so President Trump clearly showing that he's putting action ahead of words. You mentioned domestic policy again. We have these tariff issues. We have these trade deals. We have all of the economic issues to look at. President Trump, by the way, guys, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and funding for deportations. That's in the big, beautiful bill, which, by the way, Charlie, I'm told if it goes well, we could be seeing the big, beautiful bill being passed before July 4th, which I remember that was exactly when President Trump said it would be done. I think that's great. Also, and I'm just going to say it because it's been raging in the background of all of this here, there's this question. Senator Mike Lee has this new addendum that he wants to put in, this amendment to the big, beautiful bill regarding the use of our public lands. I know, guys, we've been chatting about getting into this issue on one of our thought crime episodes or as a debate, but that's something where I know has been absolutely raging. So I'd love to see that put to rest as well. And look, we're going to hear both sides out. I don't want my national parks being given over to some nameless, faceless corporation. So I want to see what's going on. I want to see the proof of the pudding before we put anything else into this bill. But also, we've seen Senator Mike Lee, and he's been so supportive of us in the past. So let's hear everybody out on this and put that to bed as well. Ton of things on the domestic issue. And by the way, these can all get done now because President Trump has just delivered for us on the foreign policy side.
Totally. Big time. And by the way, a lot of the guys that are more neoconservative on the Hill, they better vote for the big, beautiful bill. They got what they wanted. They always wanted Iranian nuclear sites to be destroyed forcibly, and it happens. They got what they wanted, ended up being the right call for America, and President Trump was right all along. One last thing, everybody, just as a favor, then we have to sign off. Put 388 up on screen. This is not Photoshopped, I promise you. This is very real, even though the numbers are all screwed up. Hold on. The numbers are messed up. That's the bad one to put up. No, it's not Photoshopped, I promise. Let me find another one. Sometimes it does this on Apple Podcasts. Let me do this. Anyway, the point being, let me see. Okay, this one's not. This one, the numbers are right. So Anyway, just as a favor, all together we could beat the New York Times then, everybody, if you guys subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. In addition, there it is. If you guys subscribe, we're beating Call Her Daddy. We're beating Joe Rogan. We just have one more slot. And so that is you take out your phone to Spotify or Apple Podcast and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. Just a little fun thing to beat the New York Times tonight. I want to say thank you guys for watching. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. We're going to give away another 10-side MAGA hats if you guys send us proof of subscription. That is freedom@charliekirk.com. And one last thing. Thank you to Real America's Voice for always covering us. We love and appreciate all of you guys, Rob and Parker. So download the Real America's Voice app. You can watch Studio 6B right now. I'm going to hand off to them for extended and continued coverage. God bless America. No U.S. troops killed, no U.S. troops on the ground, no regime change, no nation building, and no nukes for Iran. And you can thank President Trump and the masterclass that he put on display. He's operating on a whole different level. God bless you guys. Thanks so much. Onward to Studio 6B. See you guys tomorrow.